An interesting question is whether it's okay to test people. I think it is. It seems potentially manipulative, but we're all testing each other anyway. You know, in any kind of relationship, we're playing a tit-for-tat game. We're playing a game in which we respond to someone based on their past actions. And so we're always testing each other. Relationships ultimately are transactional, and if we admit that, if we say, yeah, there's no such thing as, like, what do they call it? They call it love, but it's unconditional love. Are you kidding me? If you cut my finger off, if you stab me, if you damage me to other people, if you lie, then there's conditions on that love, and love will be over. So having unconditional love is pretty ridiculous, even for a dog. Like, you know, to love a dog, if that dog starts biting people or children or something, or destroying all your shit, then that behavior has to stop. The relationship is conditional based on good behavior. And so I've wondered sometimes about that. Now, if you did actually more conscious testing, in a way, having reputation management at all is a way of testing people. You know, you test them based on past behavior. And that seems okay to do, to me. And then you get trickier, like, you know, in a group of unknown people. If you're going to invite them into your home, or you were at a festival and you don't want people who steal there. For example, I've gone to a large festival, and there's people who will show up with an empty truck there to steal shit from other campers. It's a long festival. It's like a week long. And I would like to catch them and protect the people in the festival from having that occur. I mean, you get into questions of entrapment. You know, what if I have what do they call them, air tags? I guess there's some other brands. Trackers, GPS trackers, and you put it on your car. Well, I think that's legit. You don't know when it's going to get stolen. But what if you then left on purpose out an expensive item, and you made it an attractive thing to steal, and you had it tagged, so that you can test and find out who your criminals are? I mean, it gets really weird. Like, do you test your romantic partner by having someone else try and seduce them? There's a whole video channel on YouTube just about that. Seems pretty fucked up, but a good thing to know, you know? And then there's literally testing, like for STDs and stuff, that I would recommend for any, like, intentional community that was fairly sexually open, or even ones that aren't, since people do sleep with each other. I mean, you could have a hardcore, moralistic, religious community, and people will still sleep with each other. If anyone has access to children, then I think that having cameras be watching the people who are taking care of the children, and the children themselves, to not trust the children to treat each other appropriately, and to not trust adults to treat them appropriately. That's why we also do a background check. It's a reputation check. We're not trusting people blindly. And the only people who would promote blind trust are people who want to get away with doing evil things. You know? So, what is it? It's like trust but verify. No, and that's why when we talk about security things, I've talked about architecture. We build assuming everyone's a thief, and then we don't have a problem with thievery because we didn't assume people were all magically good. We should assume the worst. Design your community for the worst. Well, not, you know, especially overtly focusing on it. You know, maybe you don't have to talk to normal people about this because they're not involved in cultural design, and you want to keep them in their little happy bubble, delusional bubble that everything is wonderful. But we're fighting against a world of violence and oppression, and we're trying to create an alternative. And so you can't be wussy about that. You have to recognize the nature that people have to take for themselves, hurt others, to not be win-win players. You know, I talked about the prisoner's dilemma recently. A lot of people's strategy is to take as much as they can and give as little as possible. Well, I'd like to just collect the people who try and overgive. Because oftentimes, in any case, you'll see this all the time. People underestimate the work of others, and they overestimate their own value of what they provide. And so they could be providing less than someone else, but the way that they measure it is they think, you know, the other person isn't providing anything of value, and they're even getting taken advantage of, when actually it's them who aren't providing enough. You get that with volunteers, you know, where their goal is to travel for free and do some work, but they don't have the attention span to actually do any useful work, and they cost way more than they're worth. I mean, why do you think that people don't use free labor? All these sites that are volunteer sites, you know, you get lots of messages from them. There's very few hosts, and there's lots of people that want positions as volunteers. Why? Why is there a disconnect there? You would think people would be, you know, chomping at the bit to have free labor, but they aren't. Most people who host volunteers do it for a year and then they quit. I watch, you know, how many profiles show up and then go away on these sites. And I haven't accepted a volunteer in quite some years. Why would I? It cost me too much. So we have to figure these things out, whether it's just regular interactions or identifying and removing from society sociopaths, whether they know they're a sociopath or not. Some are completely self-aware criminals and they're totally aware of what they're doing. I like to avoid them, but also a lot of people are unconsciously doing that. So in either case, I don't feel like playing with them. And I have the choice of whether I feel like playing with somebody or not. I'm not obligated to play with anybody if I don't like how they are. For whatever fucking reason, but especially those kind. Arrgh. Yeah, that's discrimination. It's bigotry against evil. You know, I don't care what race or nationality people have, but I am bigoted about some other things. I don't care about people's sexuality as long as it's consensual and, you know, probably in private. You know, not everybody, I mean, I'm not going to, there are certain social rules you have to follow in a diverse crowd of people who are coming from different cultural points of view. So you can't just have sex wherever the fuck you want or in front of children or something. We all actually think there should be limits. There should be rules. I just had a chat with a guy online and he really doesn't like the word rules. He likes the word agreements. And I said, well, that's just semantics. And he was like, well, that's a way of dismissing it. And it's like, well, it's an action that is not allowed in an environment. If a person does that action in the environment, then they will be removed or in some way punished. That's a fucking rule. And anarchists, you know, people who don't want the involvement of the state can still make voluntarily agreements to limit behavior or require behavior in their community. That isn't anti-anarchist at all. And just admit you're fucking doing it. You know, like I know some vegans that don't want to admit that they don't allow meat eating on their property. So what they say instead is, we don't allow the slaughter of meat on our property. Okay. What happens if I show up and I cook up some meat? Is that going to be okay? I really doubt it. You know, these are folks who don't want to admit that they have a fucking rule because they're anti-rules. But just don't be hypocritical. Just say, we're against this thing. Well, they do that. But then say you can't do it. They waffle on it because it would like reduce their marketing or something. I don't know what the problem is. But just make your rules explicit and accept that you are going to be a freedom-loving person, and you can still say in this space, these are the rules, at least at this time. And you can have different rules in one place or at different times. Like you can have a clothing optional sauna at times, and like when I've had groups that are more conservative here that I don't know, then the sauna is not clothing optional. because it isn't fitting with the culture of the visiting group. That's okay. And then other times it can be clothing optional. It was funny, one time I had a group here, and they're all individuals, they were volunteers, and one woman came, and later her write-up on her visit was that she had visited a nudist place. And it's like, that surprised me, since first of all, I'm not that uptight about nudity at all. I mean, I've had a hot tub and a sauna and been to festivals that are clothing optional and stuff like that. But for her, it was probably her only experience with a few people being naked in a sauna. And so for her, it was a nudist place. I find that fairly amusing. It's fine. And it was a perfectly nice write-up. It wasn't like she was freaked out or insulted by it or anything like that. But it's funny, it didn't even occur to me, because I don't really consider myself a nudist since I wear clothes most of the time. But you know, a lot of my videos talk about how we can work together, and a lot of those do place limits on behavior. You know, there's no such thing as freedom. You're certainly not free in the default world. You're absolutely oppressed, and you're involved in the oppression and murder of other people, the enslavement of them through the products you buy. You're involved in the destruction of the planet. It's very hard to not be. And I am too, to a much lesser extent, since I live in the middle of nowhere and don't consume hardly anything. And you could say, well, he uses a bunch of this land. Well, I'm protecting this land against getting cut down for monoculture. So I see that as a fairly positive thing. And I'll set rules, and I'll call them rules, for anybody who comes here. I don't feel shy about that. If somebody doesn't like rules, don't come here. I'm gonna make a whole fuck ton of them. And we've joked about that before when I've had visitors. One group started making up really silly rules, one of which I think was based on another language, and it was like, don't throw the kitchen out the window or something. I don't know, but it would be really funny to make up some really goofy rules. I've made up a few myself, like don't touch the ground, because it's actually a metaphor for, you know, controlling where your feet go and not stomping on everything everywhere. Like one time I had a group here, and they started playing soccer right next to a garden, and sometimes the ball would go into the garden, and then they would go in there to get the ball. Well, now they're stomping on my plants. Also, a lot of the land around here is fairly sensitive, and it has mushrooms and stuff, and I just don't want to have a stomped down place. I've seen whole parks. Like I went to the city recently, and I saw a park, the biggest park in the city, and it's all just lawn and some trees. There's no biodiversity. It's not good for any kind of birds and stuff. It's just, it's horrible looking to me. Now I understand that this is ridiculous, okay? I need to cut a lot of plants so you can even have trails through it and alcoves and places to sit. But I want 90% of this to remain for birds and bees and stuff like that, and have it be that the humans, we just kind of fit into it. So this is a rule, a design rule about land use, and we have to have those. So I guess I'm pro-rule, and the best I can do is express those really extremely well up front, have them written down, and they'll be different according to what space it is, what event or workshop it is, because there's different needs, you know? So, you know, there's rules about how to treat the dogs. Like the base rule is don't feed the dogs at all. We control their food system, and I don't want anybody else feeding them, because one of the things that, for example, people love to feed dogs, right? Because it makes a dog happy. And so they'll feed them from the table. Well, if you do that, now you're teaching a dog to become a beggar. And people don't like begging dogs, do they? But they will create them because they want to be nice to the dog. I want rules in the kitchen. I've had some people come in and they say, I'll cook for other people. And then they cook really unhealthy food, because that's what, you know, makes them popular. If they create more food that's all starches and sugars, and, you know, for a short time visit, it doesn't really matter what people eat, but we're trying to promote a very positive diet here And so whoever's in charge of kitchens or restaurants and things, for the most part, should be producing healthy food. And there can be less healthy options. That's just fine. I'm not actually hardcore about it. These are not rules that come from any god. They're rules we make up to allow us to create a better temporary autonomous zone, a better society, a little bubble within society where there's actually more freedom than in the default society. But some of those rules are necessary to give us more freedom or more health or whatever. So, yeah, thinking about shit or